You can take your seats, that would be great. We're going to start in a moment. Hello, welcome. I'm Oliver Hicks, I'm from North 6. Super excited to be having tonight a group of very interesting creatives. I think at the end of the day, we all love to understand the process of how we get to make a beautiful image, great moment, great experience. So tonight, hopefully we can ask those questions and look at what that process looks like. We want to make a shout out to the AMAs and everyone over there for helping us put this together. And I hope I have a good conversation. Just to introduce some people here. Jennifer Pastore. Jennifer Pastore is an award-winning visual director and curator with over 20 years of experience working primarily in magazines. Most recently, Jennifer was the executive photographer director of the Wall Street Journal magazine, which she was doing that for over 10 years. Previous publications include Harper's Bazaar, Teen Vogue, and the New York Times magazine. Consulting clients include Chanel, Rizzoli, PBS American Experience, St. Lazare Portraits de Vie, United Nations Population Fund, and Solace Health. Jennifer was taught and lectured in the photography programs of the School of Visual Arts, Parsons, the New School of Design, Rhode Island School of Design, American Academy in Rome, Cornell in Rome, Red Hook Labs, and the Danish School of Media and Journalism in Copenhagen and Oslo. In 2022, Jennifer was awarded the Rome Prize in Design at the American Academy in Rome. Monica Paganucci is the founder and chief creative officer of playworkgroup. A graduate of Rhode Island School of Design, she has over 2 decades of experience as a creative director and unparalleled expertise in marketing, media, digital packaging, store design and visual displays, brand identity and events. Her work has been featured in Adweek, Advertising Age, and seen by billions of consumers around the globe. Before founding Playworkgroup, Monica was at Laird Partners, creative director for Gap Worldwide. Prior to that, her principal experience was at Arnell Group, where she functioned as creative director on Tommy Hilfiger, Indy Motto, and Jose Cuervo Tequila. Her clientele includes JP Morgan, Starbucks Reserve, Under Armour, Clorox Company, Patent by Tracy Ellis Ross, McKinsey & Company, Nike, Sephora, Tiffany, Vitamin Water, and many other household names. Monica. Jaime Perlman is the VP Global Brand Creative at Tory, Burch and editor-in-chief and creative director of More or Less magazine. Jaime Perlman is a creative director residing between New York and London. She began her career working in Vogue in New York and later moved to London to be creative director of British Vogue. After leaving Vogue in 2017, she founded the Jaime Perlman Studio and launched More or Less magazine that showcased vintage eco-fashion with top photographers and stylists. She's currently the VP Global Brand Creative for Tory Burch. Michael Scanlon is the Chief Creative Officer of Chandelier Creative. 14 years of experience and 10 years of Chandelier, Michael has been shaping exciting newcomers of the industry with visceral, emotional-driven brand worlds and campaigns for clients such as Hermes, Nike, Equinox, Calvin Klein, Flamingo Estates, Neiman Marcus, and Maserati. He studied filmmaking at New York University Tisch School of Arts and previously worked in Vogue and Luomo Vogue, all of which laid the foundation for an early, indelible sense of cinema, story, and style. Director at heart, Michael's video work has birthed beloved music video collaborations with Grammy-nominated artist Maggie Rogers and short films with premieres on cultural video platforms such as Now and Document Journal. And Hans Dorsinville, Senior VP of Creative Art and Beauty. Hans launched his career in 1993 as a junior designer at Donna Karan's in-house creative agency, and then rose up the ranks to become EVP of working on campaigns for the collection in the DKNY Bridge line. Subsequently, he became founding partner of Laird Partners, where he served as partner, executive VP, senior group creative director. During this time, Hans was also recognized for his work on Lane Bryant, I'm No Angel campaign that changed the conversation about plus-size women worldwide and received numerous awards. Hans was then named CCO of Select World. He also founded the CCD, Creative Coalition for Diversity, in an effort to expand opportunities for a more diverse and inclusive group of creatives of colour. Most recently, Dorsinville was tapped by the French heritage luxury brand Balmain in Paris to become his first beauty senior VP of global creative. So without further ado, let's start the conversation. Thanks everyone.
Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me actually? Yes, okay. Thank you for having me at AMA and North 6, and very happy to be here with all of you. And we're gonna warm up with talking about some industry trends. So the first question I think is something I think that's an interesting thing, especially for so many of you who've been around for so long, is how has the way you commission photography changed over the last few years? Obviously, there have been a lot of global changes. So how would you say that it's changed? And let's start with you, Hans.
Interestingly enough, I actually don't feel like that at the core, I've changed how I commission work. I think it's more how I find people to commission that has changed. So as far as the work is concerned, I think it's still looking for people who have, I think, a unique vision. I think that's really important, to try to find people who can make whatever it is that your client is looking to do come to life in the best way possible. Now what's great is that it used to be, you try to meet photographers through agents only and see portfolios and all of that. And now, as we all know, with social media, everything is at your fingertips. So you see it all, you can contact them directly, which probably doesn't make the agent so happy, but ultimately it's great to be able to be exposed to all of that possibility, and it's global now, which is really amazing also.
I mean, you've kind of already leaped into another question, but I want to kind of go down the road, because I think this is maybe something that might differ between the group here. So Monica, do you want to take this one next? And then I'm going to circle back to what you just mentioned.
I would say it's similar. I mean, in the ways that I think the big shift is now, you're seeking out talent directly in a way. So, and you have access that goes well beyond, what's local, what's national. So, and I think also you can have very different conversations and direct conversations. So you kind of get to know the talent directly, which I think was, before there were sort of many steps to get to. And then I think on social, what's exciting is you get to see, I think, a different side sometimes of their work. So, you kind of get a bigger breadth of what their vision is, I guess.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like I'm coming into a moment where I'm feeling like more confident in making like very I guess bolder decisions about who I'm collaborating with, and at the same time I feel like that coincides with what seemed to me like obviously the industry just opening up a lot. Like I remember just 10 years ago, it just felt like there were so many fewer photographers, and jobs kind of went to the same people, and it kind of didn't. A lot of those people who got a lot of these jobs, they were able to do a lot of different styles. And they were very incredible photographers. They're big names. But I think what's been exciting kind of in the past 10 years is just like how many more talent you can find and have access to, and people who are just in weird corners of the planet and doing very specific things that might inspire me as a creative to think about creative in a different way. And then when it comes time to think about who's the collaborator on this, I want to go to the source. I want to go to someone who does something very specific, and in some cases that person doesn't have maybe the most experience with a big client or this huge kind of set, and I think I'm just getting bolder and not really caring if I think the work is really strong and I can strike up some sort of connection with this person first through our first meetings, and give them a chance to do something that feels more, I think, unique and special.
I've got to earmark that one and come back to, because I have follow-ups already for all of you. So Jaime.
I agree with kind of what everyone's been saying about, you find artists on social media, and the playing ground feels much more leveled actually, and there's been so many new artists rising to the top, which is very exciting. But also I think because I really commissioned the difference, I would say, for me as well, is also coming from the platforms and where everything is living. Whereas, I came from a print background, primarily in magazines with like Vogue, and, everything is very much digital first. But even, to the point where, TikTok and Instagram, all these other platforms, which primarily is where work is being seen now. So it really has made me rethink the way I approach photography, because, campaigns now are never just pictures anymore.
Very true. So I kind of have two follow-up questions related to this topic, and one is, I would say we can all agree that we find photographers and artists on Instagram and TikTok, right? So the question is twofold. One is, where else do you look for talent besides those platforms? But maybe it's threefold, actually. The second is, how do you filter through it? Because there's obviously a lot. There's a lot more. Part of the kind of access of more artists is that there are more artists to look through, and building those relationships one-on-one is amazing, but also, there's this factor of not necessarily knowing how that person will perform on a job. It's a different thing to have a conversation on Instagram than it is to have them walk into your client. So the third part of this is, what role does the agent play in all of this? Because if we're cutting directly to the artist, then kind of there's this other part of the agent, and the agent's kind of being able to decipher how to set these jobs up for success. Sorry, did someone?
Oh, I think that's someone.
Oh, hello. Come on in. So who wants to take this one first? I'll throw it over. It's a long one. Sorry, it's maybe too many.
It's multi-layered.
Go for it.
I actually don't remember the first part.
I'll remind you.
But I'll start with the last part.
I'll remind you. The first, make it succinct. So the first is, where else besides Instagram and TikTok do you find talent? The second one is, like, how do you sift through it? And the third is, what about the agent?
Okay, so I think as far as looking for more talent, I have to say 90% of the time it is those two platforms. I think the other part is word of mouth, and the other part can also be, fairs like going to the book and stuff like that.
The book.
Yeah, is actually I still go, and I find people there. And what I think is interesting now is the fact that there is, I think, this opportunity for photographers that are more almost like artful photographers, I'll call them, than commercial photographers, and I think that's what people are actually looking for more and more, because I think the uniqueness that Michael was talking about is very much what those photographers that were overlooked before, because ultimately there was, the guard that was there and nobody else could enter, are now being sought out because they offer something different. Then as far as the agents are concerned, I mean, for me personally, obviously, it can start with a conversation, an unofficial conversation that's happening on Instagram, but soon after moves into something a little bit more official, that it's like, okay, contact my agent or whatever, because obviously this is still a business, and we still have real clients. And I think the clients, I think what's important is to find clients also that will let you do that and let the photographers be who they are. I think so many times what happens is that a client wants a name, but they don't actually want what that photographer has to offer. And that, I think, is the worst thing you can do to a photographer, and the best way to get really long pictures. And so I think it's a mix of everything, where you really have to kind of be cognizant, make a personal connection, as Michael said, with a photographer, then move it up to something more official, and then have a client that will let you really be able to bring out the best of that photographer and support them to be able to make the vision come alive.
Who wants to take that one next? Anyone else want to?
I would chime in on the agent part. I would say that, I think a good agent understands, obviously, their talent very personally. And so I think what happens when you get to the agent piece of it that's very helpful is you sort of, you get a better understanding of, not only how they work, but sort of what their true core strengths are. And, and potentially, sometimes if you're looking at, an agent that represents multiple people, they might really actually be able to, clarify the differences for you that maybe, are not as obvious in, the work itself.
Yeah. Either of you want to add anything?
Maybe to the first thing, obviously, social media, huge place where I find photographers and talent, but also magazines like More or Less and
More or
More or Less. But yeah, those editorial, I love print, and I think it's also like exposing myself to things outside of fashion as well. So music videos, film directors, like And sometimes like we'll have an idea and it's like, okay, who's the best person to bring this to life? And it's not the most expected one. Like we were just creating a skincare, a spot for a skincare brand, and our idea was very like 60s Barbarella, but like it had to be so visually dialed to that. So we ended up working with a music video director who did like Daft Punk music videos, which isn't like necessarily who you go into a skincare brand and be like, oh, they're gonna create this amazing skincare spot and the model's gonna look amazing. But the whole idea is singing because of that. So yeah, just kind of being very well-rounded in all types of art, and then whatever moves me, I just kind of keep in the back of my mind until it's time to think of that person, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to the point that you made earlier, you know, it's one thing you can get a photographer, a lot of brands get hooked on like a name or a person, and it's really about setting up that person for success, whether it's the agent or the art director. I think there's a huge responsibility, especially like I meet, especially, you know, having an indie magazine, I meet so many incredible young talented people, but have, you know, if I was to bring them on board to a Tory Burch campaign where there's like 65 people on set and you have to shoot a shoe at a very specific angle and everything is so intense, it's also, you know, it's bringing that, you know, that sort of wisdom and protection to the artist to make sure that they can deliver what's expected as well, and also, yeah, to really play to their strengths as an artist. But I do think it's interesting, like seeing like Alex Soth or people like that shooting, you know, Bottega campaigns, or, you know, I love that the world's opening up, and, you know, using a music video director to do beauty brand. I think that's super exciting, using unexpected people and not just going to the same old, you know, household names.
In a way that makes our job different and or like harder in a way though, because you kind of have to very quickly understand the level of experience this talent has. You have to empathize with them. You have to kind of understand their psyche and their behavior in a way. So then our job is to make sure that we're creating the environment for them, that the brief is dialed and everyone's expectations are managed, and that the arts is kind of protected to be able to do their thing, but at the same time deliver what it is that we're expecting. So you have to kind of sometimes like create this cocoon around them. It's very like,
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean,
specific
and
kind
it's
of cocoon.
tricky because if you find sometimes this sort of like hidden gems on social media talent and they don't necessarily have an agent, then you're a little bit, you know, you're really kind of working without that kind of knowledge of what makes that artist tick and how to set them up for success. So someone mentioned, no, it was you, mentioned magazines. So that's kind of segueing to another question, which is how relevant is editorial photography now, and how much do you look to editorial photography for inspiration when you're thinking of references or, you know, photographers you want to work with? Sure.
I do.
Kind of already answered it, but
I do.
expand.
I'm very analog. I rip pages out and I take them up on my wall, and it's always like rotating and moving around. So I think, you know, it's different, like from when I was growing up in the 90s. Budgets are obviously insanely different, but I think the creativity is still there, and it's just, it's.
So for the record, Michael thinks editorial photography is still relevant. Same.
I do.
Jamie, I'm assuming you would agree with that, but what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with it. I think magazines are important for creating disruption, because I think, like, I came from a school of magazines where originally they were meant to just sell loads of copies and be kind of safe, and now I feel like what's happened in the last like 5 years or so, maybe more, everything's become much more disruptive and sensational, and people are doing like really bold covers to kind of cut through everything. And I think that sort of creative disruption you see in magazines really is exciting for art directors, for brands. And I think, you know, to your point that you made earlier, you really need a brand that's going to allow you the freedom to be bold, you know, and I think it's hard to find. Usually see boldness in editorial photography that doesn't always translate to selling bags and shoes or beauty products, but sometimes it all clicks, you know?
Monica.
I would say, yeah, no, I mean, I think editorial is definitely important. I feel like, if anything now, we have sometimes more work to do. We're looking at everything in order to sort of, really assess or find the talent we want, and editorial is definitely still, very relevant. I'm a little bit more digital, not quite as analog, but I mean, obviously I'm looking at it online, So I definitely, and I also think there's a lot of sort of brands now that have editorial, right? It's not just the more traditional format. So I think there's a lot of, that's one way for sure to find talent.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think there's just freedom in editorial that you don't have with commercial clients, and that's the reality. But I do think that those editorials are the things that at least help to push the envelope, even for a client. If you show them something, you say, I want to use this person, because you might not do exactly that work or as pushed, but at least you're pushing a little bit, and then you go to the client and say, let's just go for it, which is great.
So Hans, still with you. What does an artist have to do to get noticed by you, to cut through all of the noise?
I mean, honestly, it goes back to what I said at the beginning, uniqueness, vision. And the problem now is the fact that everybody has an iPhone and you can take a picture, but not everybody can make an image. Taking a picture and making an image are two different things. And so, when you really think of the people who, even in the past, if you think of the past, some of the greats, right, that had one style, and that's what they stuck to, and every time they tried to do something different, it did not look like that, but ultimately there's a reason why all of us look at as references a lot of these pictures that are still super, super relevant. And somehow there's a timelessness to it, there's an identity to it, and a uniqueness to it. Nobody came around and did Peter Lindbergh. Nobody came around and did Rivers, nobody did, repeated that. And I think that's the hardest thing for photographers now, to find their look and their vision and what they want to convey. Because I think at the point where photography started to become about realness, then I think it became very homogenous. Because my pictures that I was taking look just like somebody else's pictures. And I think we're at a point now where we're actually they're trying to kind of find a way to be somewhat real, but in their own unique way, and trying to put a spin on it. And I agree also with Michael that I think the idea of video moving image has helped photographers a lot, because they've all had to adapt to the fact that most often now, it's like you have to take a picture, you have to do video, you have to do everything. And so I think it's pushed people to kind of think three-dimensionally, not just 2D, which I think has made photography better in a way.
Yeah. Jaime, what do they have to do?
God. You go first.
I'm just
You
gonna
don't have to all answer every question, but really, what do you have to do?
What do you have to do to stand out?
Yeah, to notice them.
Okay, well, I think, yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know, it's hard for me to say what the one thing is for a photographer to do to stand out, but I think I look at photography and video in a very instinctual way, and so if I see something that I like, it kind of grabs me and I remember that person, it's hard for me to put like real science to it. And I think, what does stand out to me often is, consistency in vision and strength in vision and, I do find it much harder. I'm sure agents find it much harder to sell photographers that have many different styles and visions. And, it's that, and maybe in the past that was very marketable, but I think now you kind of hire somebody to do their thing. And so if that thing sort of feels fresh or works or the brief, then they'll get the job, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like in honesty, and like when that kind of mixes with something that feels exciting. I think, to Hans's point, like when everything got very real and like authentic, everything started looking the same. And I think I'm just looking for a surprise and something that feels like really specific and personal, that I haven't seen yet.
It also sounds to me like it's a bit of a gut,
It's just a gut feeling, yeah.
Monica, what do you foresee in the next 5 years? Where do you foresee the kind of industry moving in terms of creative?
Well, I definitely think more experiential. I think that whole idea of 3D is going to go into 4D and beyond, probably. I think there's going to be more platforms to showcase, work, art, all of it, and different ways of, interacting with it. So I think that's what I see. And AI also will be, I think, a big conversation.
I do think of AI just
It's a tool.
is a tool.
Yeah.
I think it obviously to jump on it, or to create all this like amazing imagery, amazing in the sense that it's born of somebody's imagination. So therefore my imagination is different than yours. So what I can create is very different than somebody else. I don't necessarily know that there's a ton of quality from a visual standpoint that is lasting.
Is this the moving iPad cover of 2024?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that?
What were we talking? AI.
Creative, no, we're
Oh.
creative
Sorry,
in 5 years.
Just wanted to
I think it's like, I don't know, I get excited about like just like people just exploring things that like feel like they were given but like maybe they weren't and are very hyper specific. Like I think about I don't know, like the poster necks and like that they're like hyper specific, like cropping and like zooming in, or like this kid Julian Klinowitz, I don't know if I said his name right, but like everything's done on like a VHS camera, and like kind of just like zeroing in on a medium or like an angle within it and exploring it and exploding it into every corner, and I don't know, that's what I get excited about, like these kind of like specific lenses that people take on and
So it's kind of, in a way, what you're saying, Hans, which is that there are different, maybe more tools for
Right.
creating a distinct voice.
But I keep getting, at the beginning, everybody gets excited about something new. So obviously,
Yeah.
there's this scary moment where you think, like, oh, everything's gonna be
No.
up,
Yeah.
and then you realize, well, you can't. It's just one more tool that you can use, but it has to be put into the right hands.
Oh. Metaverse. Remember that?
Yeah.
Still talking about that for like 365 days.
And we still live in the real world now.
Sure do.
Still not an answer, but anyway.
So I'm going to move on to something, we're going to change gears a little bit towards the decision-making processes. We're going to pull back the curtain a little bit. So Monica, do you want to talk us through kind of your decision-making process when you're selecting a photographer for a project?
I mean, I think again, it's a combination, obviously, of many things. So obviously, it's some is instinctually feeling like this person can deliver on what the client is looking for specifically. That they're going to bring a strong point of view that will elevate or create something exciting. I think that's obviously essential. And then I think from the sort of quote unquote business side of things, to ensure that, just like Michael had said, you have to create, you have to understand that they'll be able to sort of work with, the space that you're creating specific to this client or this project, and kind of shine. So, those are sort of the decisions that go into the full, thinking.
So follow-up to that is, how often do you have to present multiple photographers to a client versus one clear recommendation?
That depends on the relationship with the client, really. So obviously, some clients prefer seeing options. They want to be part of the process somewhat, or they're maybe not as clear and they want to see, options. And usually it's a first run and then you're pretty much, deciding, I think, fairly quickly these days because everything moves so fast. And then
It's option with recommendation.
yeah, it's option, exactly. And then, with other, with pattern, with the work we do with pattern, it's great because we have freedom to kind of really just pick as we wish.
And now you have a relationship.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and we can be more artful. Obviously, we go into diversity. So, that's a big thing.
Hans, do you want to take that one too?
I mean, similar answer. At the end of the day, also I'll add just one thing that I think somebody that is collaborative and honestly kind and nice because it's stressful enough to be on set with clients, behind you and all that. And what you don't want is just, somebody that's gonna make it even harder for everybody. Unless they're so beyond amazing that you're willing to go through that torture.
Hey, don't say that out loud. No, take it back. You have to be nice.
No, but seriously, I think there are photographers that have long-lasting careers. Honestly, that's probably 50% of why they have long-lasting careers. They've had long-lasting careers because they just made the client feel amazing, feel like there's no problem. If it rains, don't worry, we'll get the shot. And there are other people that's drama since like the onset. And so, that's part of the decision making. If you've got a client that's not gonna stand for that.
And then what about kind of multiple versus one?
Both.
Depends.
It depends, it really depends, like Monica said. Because, like I said, for me, there's, options with Reco, and usually it's a strong recommendation for very specific reasons. And I've never had a problem with that.
Do you ever have, and this is sort of a side question, but does a client ever say, actually, I'm gonna go with your non-recommendation, and you're like, but wait, let me tell you why you're wrong. Do you ever do anything like that? And then you just say, thank you.
I'm convincing.
I bet. I have no doubt.
Or you're fine with all the options that you put forward.
Yeah, that's another factor for sure. Michael, what about you?
Sorry, I keep needing to go back to the question.
Oh, that's okay, sorry. I'm the long-winded, multi-pronged question asker, so I'm sorry.
I'm listening.
Yeah, no, my question was kind of talking us through your decision-making process, and then the follow-up was just how often you present multiple versus one.
Yeah, I think when I'm starting to come up with an idea, I'm usually starting to think about who is the right person and finding even sometimes inspiration in their work or things that they've referenced even. And then to me, it's always let's work with that person. I'm trying to make the best possible, most styled image, and honestly, trying to make my life easier.
Right.
And because I want someone who's super invested and cares about it and is into it and wants to think about all of the angles on their end as well. So it's a partner. And I've been in many situations where you hire someone who's great and then you realize that you're doing so much of their job. Besides the photography, I mean getting into retouching or even directing on set. So definitely looking for people who are excited, who are going to be super plugged in, and whose work really is more than image making, but storytelling wise, going to bring that story to life.
Jaime.
Ditto. No, I think all those things, and I also really believe, as what Hans was talking about, personality is so important because obviously talent is huge, but I feel like brands, when you work with them these days, the expectations are so high because nobody wants to waste any money, and the sort of deliverables have quadrupled from what they used to be, and it's just, I don't know, expectations, a level of excellence, it's just so major, and I think you really need someone who's not only talented but also has that kind of level of professionalism where you feel confident and the client has confidence. It goes a long way, and I think sometimes that's really hard for photographers because some of the most talented ones are completely deranged and really hard to deal with personality-wise. And I would love to work with so many interesting people, but I think finding that sort of balance between talent and professionalism is very important for a big ad campaign. For magazines, I can work fully with deranged people all the time. That's totally fine. I'm also a masochist. I don't mind being tortured now and again, as long as there's no huge budget at stake or a client that's going to drop me.
So I guess when we're filtering out deranged photographers on that topic,
Names. What names?
I mean, I have names. I definitely have names. That's another topic. But the question for you is, how often do you work with, or how much do you rely on art buyers to help you not only come up with photographer suggestions, but also kind of maybe give the background information on level of derangement when you're thinking about the work in a way that maybe an agent wouldn't share in the same way.
For me personally, I probably don't work with art buyers. It's not something that's really I've ever had much experience with for what I do.
I haven't had an art buyer in my organization. It's been a while. But we have Katie Olson, who's incredible. She is our head of production. Like she's filtering things and some intel, but usually like the ideas for the collaborators come from the creative team.
Okay.
Same.
Not saying for me, actually. No, I think everything's a partnership, right? And so, I just worked on a project with an amazing production company that actually came to the table with a bunch of suggestions, the photographers. I have my own ideas, and they have great ideas also, and actually did pop filter because some of the photographers I didn't know, and I was a little worried. And they were super honest, and they were like, this one, great photographer, but watch out, this and that, So, I think as long as we're transparent, we've got, great relationships, and we can share that information. Doesn't mean that I won't choose that photographer necessarily, but it's good to know before you get into it, because I think it helps you to also position that person to the client in the right way, so that they're surprised at the onset. The last thing you want is a photographer that decides to walk out, or, I'm not shooting this, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, then you also ideally know kind of the temperament of the client. Some clients can tolerate more than others. So on the subject of social media, I know that's where we're finding a lot of talent, but how important is it to you, the reach of the social media? Let's say someone's Instagram reach, their numbers, their ecosystem that they are. How much is that does that factor in your decision-making process? Is it important that they have kind of their own existing following? Does any of that matter? Do you think of that as kind of like a extra layer of goodness if somebody has a huge reach with interesting followers?
Quick answer for me, no.
No, okay.
No.
So maybe this might be a lightning round. Monica, go.
No.
Okay.
No.
I would say no, but I think it's more the talent that brings the reach more than the subject rather than the creative.
Okay.
Probably.
So,
Well, I think it's also like so many of the projects that I do are like very commercial, and the creatives that they might not post it, so it doesn't really
right.
matter because they're really posting their editorial work. So
That's a fair
sometimes
point.
I do think like, oh, maybe for a very specific client, like, and a very specific collaborator, would it like for that client
makes
to be
sense.
like exposed or like positioned on that person's channels, but it's not real.
Well, I guess an
very, like,
advertising
cherry
is
on
not
top.
named very often.
Yeah, it's not a make or break, I think.
Yeah.
No.
Is anyone here actively using AI for their work?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Semi-actively.
Do
Semi.
you want to talk us through kind of what the role is?
Well, it's really honestly, for me, it's much more about visualization than anything else. It's not about putting out an AI image out there. It's more that I have ideas in my head that I want to be able to visualize, and you can sit there for hours and hours looking for something. And sometimes it's a little faster, to do something like that. But I'm not at the point yet where I feel like,
So you're not rendering campaigns, but you're using it as a tool.
yeah.
That's great. Monica?
We're kind of using it. We can, we've worked on a campaign that is basically all digital. That's all AI
Wow.
imagined for the launch of a movie on Netflix. So, I think it depends obviously on the category and the client, and I think you can be disruptive with it. Again, I think from a sort of artful, beautiful standpoint, it's it's a different sort of beast in a way still. And then I think we also use it as tools, within in-house, meaning internally, right? Like to sketch things out and, come up with different ideas. And then from the strategic side, we use it also. So we do use AI.
What about you two, Michael?
I think it's a very cool tool for like rounding, like when we're building a campaign, it's always photography and film, referenced and building it through that way. But I'm not using it myself, but I've seen the art directors and the team use it in this insane way to make the storyboards just look like something that would take 3 days on Photoshop. They can do it in like 3 hours in AI, or if we're doing a 360 campaign, like create this insane store window for the visual merchandising. I've tried to do it myself, it like goes nowhere. But it's there's something to be done with it. I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but like for doing like a sizzle, like a video for a manifesto, you can have that celebrity voice that you would want to cast in the manifesto, write the script, and in the style, record it in the style of Missy Elliott or RuPaul, and all of a sudden, they record it sizzle, and it's probably illegal, but
I think it's illegal, but it's a sizzle.
it's pretty powerful. But you have to like go in and every single word and get every word right because the emotions are so melodic and crazy. But you spend enough time on it, you can figure it out.
Ooh, okay. Jaime, what about you?
You should have turned off the
Not yet. I mean, I've been using, I would like here and there for little TikTok activations, but nothing like huge, like a whole campaign, writing a score.
I think, I mean, for me anyways, I'm such, I like humanity. I like realness, I like real emotions, I like to elicit that. And I'm having trouble, honestly, with AI to do that. Oh, that's cool, but it doesn't really have yet for me a lasting impression and deeply connected impression, so it's very early.
Okay. So, switching gears again, just managing lightning round again. But when you're putting together a project, do you start with the creative team or the budget? And how involved are you in terms of when you're thinking through a project, thinking about the budget? Jaime.
Well, you kind of have to do them simultaneously because you need the guardrails of the budget to then kind of limit, or you can think of the best idea that's like gazillions of dollars. So you need to have like some kind of parameters and work within that. So I always usually tend to sus check everything because I'm not exactly good with numbers myself. So I usually sus check with like a producer or like, work with an in-house producer to come up with a rough budget and then try my hardest as the creative gets built to fit actually and come into that budget. Oftentimes it still goes over and there's lots of back and forth, but it's very sort of I don't know, it all happens together, if you see what I mean.
But is it that you're thinking about the budget in terms of the creative approach or the photography you're commissioning?
I think it's kind of more the concept, and then the concept sort of always comes first, and then, it's always then finding the right photographer for that concept that works within budget.
Got it.
And
So it's kind of all together, big.
yeah, and I think that really comes with doing it over and over.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to have all that information.
Yeah, I mean, so Michael, are you thinking, how much are you thinking about the budget when you're thinking of who to commission?
I'm getting better. I know the concept of the money. But I think, like as you go through it and you make more and you're closer to the being on the line for the budget, you start to understand like what does a 1.6 million get you versus 500,000?
In terms of photography.
Everything.
Everything.
Like it's so much more than it's the photographer, but it's also how much set can you build and how much talent can you have and the level of talent and how many wardrobe changes and deliverables and post and so.
But in your mind, are you like, oh, that photographer they're in my expensive premium bucket of how much they cost versus someone else? Or are you thinking more holistically? Sounds like holistically.
I think photographer for sure. At first, I'm like, okay, is this a 75? Is it a 50? Is it like 15? But at the same time, it's all of those things are really meshed with the overall idea and overall concept, and you kind of just.
More about budget than for you two. It's more than
More than we can make
I
credit.
give you some credit. Give you some credit. Money's so boring. Monica.
Budget, for sure.
Budget.
Yeah, budget, for sure. But, you know, it is, you know, like these guys said, it's sort of, it is a parallel path. So, you know, you're sort of thinking of the creative, you don't stifle the creative, but, you know, you're thinking it through, but then you're aware, obviously, on, you know, the budget and the
Do you think
limitations.
that's changed in the past, you know, the past few years, or something like, oh, we have to actually pay attention, budget, it's a creative.
In comparison to like 20 years ago, yes.
I mean, even 10 years ago.
There were no budgets at the time.
So it's
There were reshoots, too.
Yeah.
there were,
Well, I think there was
shopping days attached to
a
shows.
lot of the statement getting tossed around. We'll make them dream and they'll find the money.
Yeah.
I don't think there have been very few times where the money hasn't been found. But
Yeah, because I do think though, you know, it really does start with an idea, as I said, because if you've got a really, really strong concept, and I think people's definition of concept can vary, but if you've got a strong concept, ultimately you can produce it at a super high level, or you can produce it at a low level. It doesn't change the idea necessarily. The idea is still great. And so I think you have a little bit more leeway. If you have no idea, and your idea is, oh, I'm going to use this in the nude, then it's not an idea. You know what I mean? Then everything hinges on those photographers. And that's why I think we've all kind of really understood the importance of the idea, so that we are not limited by, oh, you know, it's only that person that can do it. So, you know, ultimately you have to decide what's most important to get the idea across in the best way. Is it the talent, or is it the photographer? Is it the location? Is it the music? By the way, music costs a lot of money. There's all those pieces, and sometimes, and this is where maybe Michael and I don't agree, is I don't think it's always the photographer. You know what I mean? Sometimes it might be like an amazing song is going to make this thing work. So you have to balance, you know, where you want to put the money.
I mean, that's refreshing, I think, to hear, to me at least. I think that's to think about it in that whole multi-platform way, to use all of our tools. So I want to talk about how you all approach diversity and inclusion in your commissioning work. So Hans, do you want to start with that? Obviously, you've started this.
Yeah, and that's obviously something very important for me. A couple of years ago, I started this organization because I just felt like, honestly, we need to start from the ground up, in the sense that in order to get talent, and this was not necessarily geared towards photography specifically, but it was just really just creative people, and that we needed to kind of create a safe space for diverse talent to feel like they actually have a place, you know, in our world. And I was very aware of the fact that there are very few people that look like me that are in this industry and that are at my level, but I work very hard to get here, but I also have opportunities, you know, that other people don't have. And so I think that's why it's important, but at the same time, there's a flip side, which ultimately, you know, if you're doing a project and you're trying to find who the right person is, the right person might be a person of color, might not, you know, you don't just go in and go, oh, I can only hire that kind of person. You're hiring who you think is the right person. And there's an experience from a photographer, like, it's interesting because we both worked on Pattern, the Tracy Ellis Ross, and two completely different photographers, but both two photographers of color. And I think that was super important, you know, for that brand, because it was about a certain experience that really could only be captured by somebody who understands that experience. So I think we continue to find ways and to now actually find artists that really before were invisible, and so a lot more chances. Now I think the problem is the clients. Is that you've got to find the clients that are also inclined, and not just say, well, this is a brand for X ethnicity, so therefore, okay, but that any photographer really could participate in creating an image if the sensibility of the photographer is what you're looking for, you know, and that's the vision that you have for the brand.
I mean, is that something that you forefront in the conversation with the client to bring up the importance of inclusion, diversity, all those things, or is it sort of just baked into picking the right photographers for the client, for the
I mean, for me, it's baked into the conversation, but diversity, I think, to the client is much more geared from the talent point of view. I think in the end, who we use as a photographer and all that, I mean, they have to see the work and be like, yes, that work looks great. And I certainly would go in and say, oh, this is this ethnicity photographer, so therefore, I mean, it's more like, this is the kind of work.
Yeah.
And so that should be the photographer.
Yeah. Monica, do you want to take this one too?
Yeah, no, I agree with Hans. I think it's usually baked in. I think, speaking of pattern, is definitely a great example. I think specific to pattern, I think, that with that brand, part of the ethos is the idea of, giving, really inclusion and diversity, sort of stage forefront. So, I think that's where it's a different kind of brand versus, sort of other clients that we
Yeah.
have, So in that case, that's always first of mind
Yeah.
at sort of every
It's
level of
branding.
detail. Yeah, exactly. But, I think clients are, in general, at least the clients we have, are very sort of aware already and savvied up, and they're interested, and sort of open. So, it's included in the conversation, but you obviously can highlight, features
Yeah.
depending on what you're trying to showcase.
Michael?
Exactly the same. I mean, I think you want to create work that has diverse perspectives, but at the same time, you're trying to find the best person to tell that story. So, sometimes it's a diverse lens, sometimes it's a white guy, and then that gets kind of stressful, but then you can round it out. But it's not that stressful. It's more just like thinking about, okay, there's other people on set as well, the stylist, the DP,
It's a
like,
good team.
it's the whole team and making sure that feels well-rounded and cool and interesting. And I feel like clients, in my experience, have never really had any issue or pushback around diverse collaborators. It does come sometimes down to the talent and who is representing the brand, because they sometimes get stuck in that, well, this is our audience, and we want to just reflect that audience, and that audience isn't diverse.
Like a
That's-
linear thinking.
Right, and it's like, so that's always something that you have to navigate in a complex way.
Jaime?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the ecosystem of a creative team to feel really well-rounded and, and balanced. And also, it's that balance between, diversity, but also hiring the best people for the job. But I think it's also our responsibility as art directors and brands to keep creating opportunities for people of all backgrounds to participate and I've really seen in the last years how the playing field has changed, especially because it is, there's a lot of new photographers emerging and people aren't scared of that anymore, and it gives, it allows us to find people of all different backgrounds to work with big brands, and it's exciting.
I'm torn, there's two questions and we're running short on time. So I guess, what advice would you give to emerging photographers to get noticed by creative directors? And if you're fast, I can ask you the second one.
Be yourself, which sounds like so cliche, but it really, for me, that's what it is. Be who you are. I want to know who you are.
Monica?
I'd say hone your craft and have a strong point of view.
Okay. Michael?
Less DMs and emails and more maybe
Yes,
really
you're
exciting
here.
stuff.
You're here.
Yeah, I'll find you.
That might be the quote of the night. I don't know.
Yeah, a strong point of view, I agree.
I don't know, maybe this is not the best to end on, but is there anything that you do that's worth sharing about how you navigate the client creative relationship? So, that kind of two-pronged, like protecting the client, or servicing the client, but also protecting the talent, the photographer, the artist.
I think that's the whole point of being an art director. You're like the middle person between like the creative people and the money people, or, brand and photographers. And that, that it's important to be diplomatic, and that is a huge part of the job. It's obviously you need to have a creative vision and be able to put together a concept, but it's really about managing people and relationships. That's a huge part of, it's probably 50% of what we do, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you have to understand all sides. You need to understand your talent that you've hired. You need to understand your client and their realities and what's keeping them up at night. And I think you have to, you're almost like a vessel for information, but you also have to like filter it in a way that like you're being direct and clear with everybody, but not running around hysterically like saying everything that each person said back and forth to each other, and just keeping it professional, calm, exciting, productive.
I would say managing the client, educating the client, and then protecting the talent. That's pretty much how I see it.
Yeah.
Agree with all of that, and on top of it, I would say make the client realize that they should want to be trailblazers. Like, you don't want to be the one who's just doing what everybody else is doing. And I think that sometimes fuels them to be like, oh my God, yeah, I'm gonna do what somebody else did. Like, I don't want to do my own thing. It gives them courage.
Inspiring courage, I love it. So, I think at this point, we're gonna open it up to the audience. We have how much time for questions? How many minutes are we working with here?
We have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, all right. So who has questions? Stacy. And I can't call on all of you by name, but Stacy's in the front row. Stacy.
You have to stop.
And speak
loudly. Okay, do you look at our mailers?
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't get to that.
Oh.
The email ones or the printed ones.
I'm on unsubscribe tear right now. I am.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And Megan wants me to ask, what about our other talent besides photographers?
Movement directors, casting directors, do you actually want to have a relationship with those people and learn about their works, or are you looking to photographers to suggest those people to you?
I am always curious, like, it depends, like, what's leading the idea?
I would say yes for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
always great to see, interesting work. That's really what it is. So, if an email comes in and it's interesting, set designer, photographer, at some point there's a link up anyway, but yes, I'm interested, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree, but I also think at the same time, what you said is true too, because the photographers have such an opinion on the people they want to work with that, it's more if a photographer says, well, whoever you want or whatever, then yes, this person or this person, you know what I mean? So I think it's sort of a bit of both. So you're wondering if you should keep sending the emails, right?
Yeah.
I just think that's a lot of emails.
I personally am really terrible with email. I get too many emails, and so I don't check. You can't really reach me by email.
My follow-up then, as agents, if you guys are not looking at the emails and people aren't in the office, what do we do?
Interesting. Well, I mean, I like to, a personal email is better than a newsletter. Because I usually do get back to a personal email. But newsletters, I unsubscribe to everything, not just like, Amazon, like whatever, I don't know. I unsubscribe to all of it.
But it's funny because there's also a timing thing. I found myself that I'll get emails, nothing, then all of a sudden the project comes in, and then I get the email, and I'm like, oh my God, that's perfect, I hadn't thought of that person. You know what I mean? So, but do I read the whole paragraph? No, I don't read the whole paragraph. But I look at who is that, do I know them, do I not know them, and then it gets kind of stored. But for me, the reminder is good. If it happens at the right moment, it's perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
Please do.
You get a personal email, somebody knows the brand, the aesthetic. Maybe read it because it's a personal email, like it's dear so-and-so, I recognize da-da-da, you've got the details, it's quick. Do you take the time to respond? Do you take the time to forward it to the person in your group who's actually kind of working with you to outreach to, because from our perspective, you send an email, you line it up, you think you're like hitting the nail, and then no. And yet you see repeated campaigns that very much line the messaging. And so, like, very much to Stacy's point, like, do we keep sending them? What do we do?
That's a really.
I mean, usually I specifically to my process is, if I receive something, chances are, if it's interesting, I do forward it to, whoever's producing or, the art director on my team or, project manager, and that's sort of how we function anyway. We tag things like that. So we do that. We do that, but
But do you respond yourself?
not always, no.
I never.
You never
I've
respond to
got
any
rules
emails.
when you respond.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally. How does it
Yeah, no,
feel
take it
not
personally, it's
responding?
nothing personal, it's
Okay.
literally just, okay,
Yeah.
that's there, so you move on, That's why I talk about timing, because
Time.
I agree, timing is a lot.
So then, and just
So
to follow
don't
up,
stop.
would you follow up then? Would you want someone to follow up even though you're not responding?
well, I would have the producer follow up.
Okay.
I wouldn't follow up.
someone will
myself.
follow up. Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on a thing where I've been trying to respond to personal emails. I'm starting to feel like it's a little overwhelming. It's just, there can be so many, and you want to be thoughtful, and you want to give them an answer and say, yes, we'll meet, or we can, but the reality is, like, your focus has to go to so many different places. So I just recently kind of stopped responding, but I'll be better. I forward them to our head of production if it's someone that I really want us to meet, and I want her to organize bringing them in, and we'll do an all-agency meet and greet, depending on who can be there.
Should we just keep going?
Yeah, and do you want to, there's many questions, so do you want to add
Wow.
something, Jamie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just because no one responds doesn't mean that email wasn't read.
Yes.
I think we do check emails and like look at the work, and we'll respond if we need something from you.
And I think what it is like, we think of that, we'll read it, we'll think of that person, it's logged in our heads, and when the moment is right, we'll think of that person.
Right, yeah.
It goes somewhere, it goes
Yeah, it
into
gets
a
stored.
brain. It definitely gets stored, whether there's a response or not.
Okay. All of ours coming up to, I can't see.
Yeah, because it's hard to see.
Stand up.
Are you gonna pass the microphone to her?
No, we're just gonna.
No, you have to project. We'll hear you.
Try to be loud. So Monica, I'm so curious because I've recently kind of gone from seeing AI as this like huge, tsunami coming towards us creatives to actually using it as a tool to kind of free up the things that I might not want to spend so much time on, so that I can actually like dig into the imagination and amazing at whatever. So if you already had this experience creating with AI to that extent, like what you see, tell me as much as you can in whatever time you have, but like what kind of jobs do you think will be available? What kind of things can creatives be doing with this that we don't know yet? We don't know what we don't know.
I mean, there'll definitely be more multimedia artists, that's for sure. So I think that's exciting. It won't take away from, what's there already as far as creative, but I think it'll definitely, allow you to do, multifaceted things that, at this point maybe are only 2D and 3D, So I think there's amazing stuff you could do there. And I think, like you said, there's, it can also support you in sort of tasking things that maybe are more tedious so that you can free up more time to kind of push the envelope, elsewhere, so.
I think it's interesting also to see when somebody is not a digital native using that tool versus somebody who is. Because I think it's quite different to use both. Because let's think about everything that's happened in the evolution of even getting Macs, right? I think understanding when you didn't have a Mac, what it was like to actually design and do all of that versus afterwards. And I think we do things differently because we were now native to the platform, and hence we can do good typography versus anybody at home that just type something on the Mac, and it's not necessarily good typography.
We
twofold, but I would say one, how do you see the relationship between a photographer and a rep as, like, what kind of relationship, well, sorry, let me start over. I think with all the subjective sort of like nuances that you all bring to determining who you select, how is it that you then select that photographer? Like, what kind of relationship are you expecting between a photographer and a rep? Sorry, I'm so confused.
Is that one question or two questions?
Well, that wasn't a good question, so my fault. I think, sorry, so as an established photographer who is on rep, I'm curious what my idea of a relationship with a rep should be now, especially because you all have access to the talent you want to hire directly. You also have an idea of who you're trying to hire. So as an established photographer that isn't repped anymore, I'm still questioning why I would have a rep. And so the two questions are, like, for reps, like, how is their position sort of changing in this time of access? And then also as a photographer, like, what kind of relationship with the rep should I be looking for that would increase my exposure or increase my connection with a client? Or, like, I guess it's I'm trying to get at the feeling of it, but it seems like there's so much disconnection I sense in the room of, like, I want to feel connected to the people I'm working with, but I don't know how to get there sometimes. Even though you feel like you can connect with me directly, and then the reps sometimes give me the connection, but I've felt also in the past that they haven't given me that connection, and it's better that I just go direct. So I guess I'm curious about how you see the rep's position changing in this time, what their role is, and then also what is a good relationship between photographer and rep look like?
But I think you're answering your own question in a way, because it is all about the relationship, right? I mean, it is an intimate relationship. And for the rep to really understand who you are, what you want to do, where you want to go, and at what pace you want to get there, I think is really important. And so they're good reps or bad reps, just like any kind of relationship. But ultimately, who you're signing up with is somebody to nurture, somebody to open doors for you, somebody who has contacts and relationships that will be beneficial to you, but somebody who will also protect you and understand, okay, this job is great because I can get money and might not be my cup of tea, but I need to do it because of whatever reason, or no, I don't do any jobs that will not further my career, my vision, and my aesthetic. So it's, that's what you sign up for. Somebody that's your champion and somebody who understands you, guides you, nurtures you.
The strategic partner too. I mean, it's being able to pull back unemotionally. I know I'm not one of the panels here, but pulling back unemotionally to look at the bigger picture strategically and help you move forward with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry.
We should talk about money.
And money.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are photographers who are exciting who aren't wrapped, but I think you're just going to have to work that much harder to do all of those things for yourself and stand out and make the work special.
So unfortunately, I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
All of ours, really.
So I'm wondering, this is for everyone, how your loyalty lays. Like, you talk about trying to find new talent and how you have all these platforms to find new talent. What is your loyalty to the people you work with that you have been in the industry for a very long time?
I think loyalty is a really big thing in our industry, and it's very important. And I think especially if you build these relationships with trust, and you bring in people that can do the job, and so loyalty is very important. And I think also finding new and exciting people to work with is equally as important. So I think it's striking a balance between the two. And life is long. People don't go away. So I think it's important to maintain relationships, even if you pause working with someone for a while. I think loyalty is a really big thing, actually.
Any last words on loyalty topic?
No. I agree.
So I think with that, we're concluding, and anyone who has questions can ask the panelists at the bar. Sorry. Enjoy your drinks, but but thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That would sound like it sounds like you said.
Thank you.
No, you talk about saying it felt like
I know, it was so fun.